All right. Well, hi everybody. My name is Mira Shaw with Trey Education. So grateful to our panelists today and to you all for showing up for this important conversation about AI, or like a sub conversation about the many things we could talk about in AI. The Rob's going to be your host and facilitator, and we'll run through some of the logistics with you. But just wanted to say that at Trey Education, we're thinking deeply about how to partner with schools to move their program and people forward. Certainly, AI is a component of that. We know the conversation is ongoing and evolving, and so there won't be a single right answer from anyone on this panel. And if you're coming to expect one, then you've come to the wrong place, because we're all sort of evolving our thinking and having different perspectives. And one of the things you'll see in this panel is a healthy diversity of perspectives. Um, so I want to say welcome and thank you. And Rob, I'll hand it back to you to do housekeeping and introduce our panelists.
Thanks. So thanks to all of you for submitting questions. We couldn't get through 100 questions in 45 minutes, even if we tried. But I've tried to identify the big themes. So we'll talk a little bit about some specific practices, some guardrails, feedback, and differentiation, and a little bit about use of AI by administrators. If you want to pin the speakers, you're welcome to do that. You'll notice that the default is to have people muted, just to spare you from worrying about background noise. Feel free to use the chat, and everybody who is registered will get a recording sometime within the next 24 hours from us. Um, Super excited to have these three panelists. Lauren, like I mentioned, will hopefully be joining us very shortly. Maya from QuestionWell and Jenna from the Cambridge School of Weston are here to share some of their wisdom with us. And then I'll stop sharing so that I can see them. All right. So yeah, what if we let's start with just a little bit of introduction. So Maya and Jenna, if you want to share a little bit about your bios and what you bring to the table today. Maya, how about you want to start
Okay,
out?
sure. So my name is Maya Bialik. I guess let's go back and then move forward in time. I worked for Center for Curriculum Redesign for a long time, thinking about the future of education and what students need to succeed in the future. And that brought me to AI in education. So I wrote a book in 2019 on AI in education, which was um, at a really good time right before everything blew up. And then I went into the classroom and I taught middle school science for a few years. While that was happening is when AI blew up, and my husband and I created QuestionWell, which is an AI tool for teachers that helps support teachers to be the best that they can be. Um, and now I'm doing my PhD in that very topic. So very happy to be here.
Thanks. And Jenna?
Hi, my name is Jenna. I come with about 20 years of experience in independent school education. I'm the director of the library and technology integration at the Cambridge School of Weston. I've worked in a variety of roles around technology, educational technology, and curriculum design at the school. And I'm on a task force with other administrators at the Cambridge School to address artificial intelligence in the classroom.
Thanks. And Lauren, jumping in. I hope everything's okay.
Everything is
You're just
fine, such as the nature of technology and an unexpected reboot of your computer, as we all know. And then we show up um, late for the Zoom meeting that we wanted to really be on time for. So I apologize and thank you so much for your grace.
hey,
Um,
right
my
on
name's
cue
Lauren
for the
Evans,
bio. Yeah.
and it sounds like we're just telling a little bit about ourselves, which is wonderful. And I'm the pre-K through 8 administrator at Carolina Day. So I did the lower school and the middle school. This is my 20 plus year in education. I have been a special education teacher, as well as an assistant principal and principal in public education. This is my 6th year in Carolina Day School. And I'm really grateful to be at the table for this conversation because AI has radically changed my workflow and my ability to be present both for students and teachers. And I'm excited to talk about the ways we've been able to leverage it, as well as some of the pitfalls that we have stepped in.
Thanks a ton. And that's a nice segue. We got a lot of comments from people saying we're trying to wrap our heads around really exciting ways that AI can enhance learning. Just as many responses from people saying faculty is freaking out. We're feeling like let's get rid of AI, let's get rid of technology. It's just too much. Wanted to give our panelists some space to talk about what you've seen on the positive side and the negative side. Thinking about where there's room to enhance things like curiosity, creativity, those human qualities that we really don't want to lose from education. So let's start with the glass half full. Let's share some of those positive, concrete examples that you've seen. Anybody want to start us off with something that's been exciting?
I will start because I was late. So I will be the person to go first to pop the bubble. I will say that I was an early adopter of AI, and less because I think adopting it solved immediate problems for me, but I'm a constant learner. So I think the biggest add to AI is it encouraged me to think about what's necessary, what is the actual role of a division head, and how can I do that role better? And I would argue that AI really improved my ability to be physically present where I am, to capture a lot of the more tactical components of my job, to help me manage communication gaps and reading people in multiple departments. And I really leveraged that early as a means of capturing minutes and meeting notes, ensuring that all of my learning specialists and core teachers are on the same page. I could be very present cognitively in a difficult parent meeting because I was fully with them and less concerned about accurately capturing exactly what was said. It also ensured that I was being clear, which sometimes for me is a challenge because I think that problems in education are very dynamic, as many of us do, and that AI allowed me to be unclear and help me think again about how to make that thinking linear, both in my planning process and my approach to giving feedback to others.
I love that point about making space for you to really do the human part of your job and put your focus there. Maya, how about you? Anything jumping to mind?
Yeah, a few things. I'll just share the one that's mostly jumping to mind. When it first came out, I think one of the biggest points of leverage that AI stands to help us with is grading. That was one of my big surprises going into the classroom. As a student, you write a couple sentences. As a teacher, you have to read a couple sentences times 100, and analyze them all and figure out what to do with them all. And so AI can be really helpful. And one thing, I think it's really interesting, the conversation that happens around this right now, where people are worried that the fact that AI is not human, can degrade that experience. And in some way, if you're saying that this replaces the teacher, then yeah, of course that degrades the experience. But just being straightforward and saying, this is AI feedback, this is not a human feedback, can actually open up doors because AI, it's truly impersonal. So I had some students who were like convinced I didn't like them. I did like them, but I couldn't convince them of that. And so when I gave them feedback, it was with all of these things on top of it. But when they got feedback from AI, first of all, the AI has nothing against them, for sure. They know that. And so they're able to just kind of take it at face value. And then second of all, the AI is fallible and can be wrong. And they're very aware of that. At least these kids were. And we talked about that as well to make sure everybody was aware of that the AI can be wrong. And that actually freed them up to think more critically about the feedback and reflect on whether they agree with it and whether they resonate it, whether it makes sense. And it helps them to think about the course content more deeply because they had to evaluate the feedback and not just take it as an evaluation of them. So that's something that I've really enjoyed. And then we're on the same team when we talk about it. So I'm like, okay, look at the AI feedback. Raise your hand if you think it gave you good feedback. And so, okay, read it to the class. What makes this good feedback? And raise your hand if you kind of disagree with what it said. And we're on the same team. We're evaluating the AI together. The AI doesn't take any offense at any of it.
I mean, lots of people are understandably worried about AI making learning a more isolated, transactional sort of process. And what you're describing there is leaning into the collaboration, the connection. Yeah, love that. Jenna, how about you? What are you seeing at CSW?
Yeah, I think certainly all the discussion about artificial intelligence in the classroom, one of the things that I've seen as being really positive at the Cambridge School is that our faculty are really taking stock of what it is that they're doing in their classroom. They're narrowing the learning goals and being really specific with students about expectations and guidelines. Everything has been about evaluating and making more transparent what we're doing or asking students to do, and where to find pockets within those learning goals for agency and for our students to be able to see themselves in the work and to actually experience some real world impact with that. So I see this as a giant opportunity for us to really be thinking about what it is we're doing that makes the experience at the Cambridge School authentic and human-centered, and to prepare them for the next steps. And then there has been all of this exciting opportunity and creativity with some of it in really small ways. For instance, we teach a class at the Cambridge School called Experiences in Imaginative Writing, and students have to go through a pretty exhaustive poetry workshop towards the end of the 6 weeks where they have to critique each other. And you can imagine that high school age students going through a critiquing process can be really challenging at face value. And teachers over the years have found it to be really problematic or hard for students to actually evaluate with the first practice published poets' work, because they're like, well, what do I have any business evaluating a poet who's already out there in the world putting their work out there? And then also really struggling to figure out how to evaluate each other by being thoughtful and not causing harm. And so they've actually generated a bunch of poetry vis-a-vis generative AI like ChatGPT, and then analyzing those poems and it really taking away some of that fear and anxiety around constructive feedback, because they can prompt the generative AI to give them very specific kinds of poems, maybe that avoid meter, for instance. And so when they're doing that practice of what it means to provide constructive feedback, they have a low stakes example that they can use that's really changed the way they experience the poetry workshop overall.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think people are worried about how is AI going to collapse the learning? How is it going to undermine the learning? The example that you just gave doesn't feel like it's falling into those traps at all. So that's reassuring. Before we shift to the threats, the guardrails, any other concrete examples that any of you have seen that you want to share with our audience?
I can provide a couple from a workflow perspective,
Sure.
with the caveat of AI is only as good as you are. You're driving it, so you're the expert to determine whether or not what it's providing you is actually valid. So I say that because I use a lot of custom GPTs and AI in order to condition it around what are my value sets, what are the value sets of the Carolina Day School, what are our protocols, what are our stakes in the ground as it relates to pedagogy, so that I'm doing more work thinking creatively about application and providing feedback and coaching than I am about getting the source of that knowledge. We're a responsive classroom school. We're using all of these fed resources in order to ensure that I am giving constructive feedback to my teachers that is in alignment with what our practice is. It's also amazing at checking my own confirmation bias. We all have teachers and students in our building that we tilt towards. I often use AI to check that tilt. Am I narrowing my perspective because of my own unique experiences as an educator, and how do I seek to find other ways to understand it. And I think that's important as well. I also use it to process more feedback. It has allowed me to receive more feedback, both from students and teachers and parents, because it gives me a means to analyze data more systematically. And again, to look for places where I have gaps in misunderstanding or gaps in perspective, because I don't have the ability in 24 hours to reach all of my constituents. I think it allows me to be a more democratic leader by systematically using feedback tools and analyzing it. One example is that in the middle of the year in our middle school, we do relationship mapping in a Google form. And we do it also in the beginning of the year. And I ask students to identify 3 trusted adults on campus and 2 trusted peers, not to look deeply at their relationships, but to analyze shifts in advisor relationships, where cohorts of friendships have changed, where I might have an isolated student, where I might have focal points of power that need to be shifted towards inclusion. And then I can overlay demographic data to ensure that, are we truly a school that fosters belonging, or is it only based upon some anecdotal data? Instead, I want to see where my students are telling me that we're actually doing what we say we are doing, and to check that systematically. And AI has made that possible in terms of workflow and workload.
Thanks. Any other examples before we shift to the glass half empty?
I'll
I can share
probably,
one.
oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to share that we really value the visual and performing arts at the Cambridge School, and I think there's been a lot of discussion around, the use of generative AI and creativity, and actually a lot of negative conversation around those things. And we have a pretty robust production studio at the school where students are making their own music all the time. And our music department chair has been using an app with students in the production studio that is an artificial intelligence app that musicians out in the real world use in a production studio. And I think students really getting to play with tools that they would use in a work context is really empowering to them. They feel like they're doing what anyone out there is doing, and they get to do it now. And I think that's a really excellent example of an application that feels rooted in what it is we're trying to execute with students, while also preparing them for the kinds of things they're going to see at the next level, and how to actually play with them and tap into them and explore them.
Nice.
Yeah, in a similar vein, in terms of students using AI, I think the key is to just really raise expectations. So like include, if you want to include AI into the assignment, you're always welcome to just make it in a class essay and not include AI at all. If you want to include AI in the lesson, you can now say, I'm going to grade this like you have a professional graphic designer, a professional expert in this topic, a professional, every single person on your team. And that's how I'm going to grade it. So the expectations are much, much higher than if you were just doing it all by yourself. What's really awesome about that is that they end up creating things that they're really proud of. And that was like the biggest difference when I was teaching, is like, yeah, you can do something with no support, and you can work very hard and accomplish something. But you can also work very hard and accomplish a sort of higher level thing where you're not learning the specifics, but you are learning the higher level creative process, critical thinking process, management, executive functioning required to run a team and critique, evaluate, and really iterate to get to something aligned with your vision, which are things that you're going to need a lot more of in the future. And then come out with something that students are really proud of. So a really brief, this is barely AI, but Canva has templates. I was doing a project with my students where they researched a genetic disease and then presented on it. And one student used Canva template And he was like, "Are you sure I can just use it like this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't care that you learn exactly how to lay out a brochure such that you can fold it in three. This isn't graphic design class, this was science class." And so the student used it exactly as is. He did a lot of research on the genetic disease, a lot more than he would have if he was busy trying to make the brochure work. And he ended up changing just one thing about the template. He changed the color to be the color of the awareness campaign of that genetic disease. And that like really got me because I wasn't even thinking about the social emotional social higher level social consciousness connection of this. And because he didn't have to worry about the lower level things, he got to that point. And if it were a graphic design class, it might have been the reverse. I might have said, use AI to just write instead of lorem ipsum, just have AI write something about whatever. And then you would have been focused on how to make the brochure.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for sharing those examples. And, there may be people watching live now and watching the recording later who are going to say, that's all fine and good, but that doesn't change my perspective on AI as an overall destructive force in education. My school's values around equity and inclusion, my school's values around sustainability and environmentalism, et cetera. This long list, our lack of faith in the people who are running these companies, whatever those reasons are, we've got some people in education who are going to hear all of those examples and still say, I'm not convinced. And I know that all three of you have nuanced perspectives here. So want to give some airtime to those threats, those concerns. So in a very general way, what comes up when you're thinking about what can go wrong, where the guardrails might need to be?
Philosophically, I want to say, hasn't that always been the case in education? We're based upon a factory model that has been tilted towards white landowners are in America. So we're always seeking to undermine what is the system that prevents access for others. And how do we instead embrace innovation as a tool for access to expand with the full understanding that as something comes through, yes, there are a tremendous amount of risks. Everything that you wrote, I agree with. Sustainability, how it's been conditioned in the large language model built on bias already. And so is our educational system. And so are components of being independent school leaders. So how do we recondition our thoughts around education and the educational experience to bring what will always be to the table? Critical thinkers who will consider what is a source of truth and how do I decide whether or not I want to agree with that, expand on it, or change it? And I think AI is a marker that could exist, could have been the Gutenberg press, could have been public education, could have been integration. And so how do we look at history and how we have responded and reframe it in a way that we can respond to AI and not make some of the mistakes around exclusion and single source of truth, hashtag textbooks, again, would be my, soapbox answer.
Yeah, I'd love to just add to that. My favorite example of a technology and how it affected society is something we forget as a technology, and that is writing. And Socrates was famously against writing because he felt that his messages would be taken out of context. Literally, the purpose of writing is to take messages out of their context and bring them somewhere else, and that people would lose their memory abilities to remember epic poetry. Both of those things have happened in spades. Would we trade writing for that? This is a trade, so every technology is a trade-off. And one thing that I think is important with using AI is metacognition becomes extra important. So even as you're using it, you might sense, oh, I'm offloading. This is a task I might want to do with my own brain. And it's hard to choose to do work because by default, like evolutionarily, we have to conserve energy. And so by default, we're usually lazy, but not like in a bad way. We're usually conserving energy. And so it's a conscious choice to say, I think I'm going to use my brain for this one. but not for that one. And so we just need a lot more metacognition, self-reflection. And then the last thing I'll say on this is what you started to say, Rob, is like thinking about the counterfactual. So, or maybe it was Lauren, of the opposite, like the alternative to using AI is not a perfect world. It's the world in which that we already have all the bias, and we probably have even more bias in some ways and less in others. And so it's always a trade-off. And just remembering, sometimes we accidentally compare mentally to like a version of perfection, whereas in reality, it's like the alternative to AI bias is purely human bias. And that's not necessarily obviously better.
Hmm. Thanks. Jenna, what do you think?
I was going to add that I think it always goes back to your mission and values as an institution. You really need to think about what are our mission and values and how is everything that we're doing, whatever technology it is, respond to those mission and values. And if it lives outside of those things or you have to justify them in some ways and they're not the right fit for your institution, and that's okay. I think at the Cambridge School, we've taken it really slowly and it can feel really slow at times, but I'm thankful for that thoughtfulness because from September to today in January, we've seen the conversation around AI and education really shift and evolve already. And so I can appreciate that we're going back to, thinking about what is AI literacy with our entire community because we are all learners, helping all of us to understand ways of contributing, adopting, leading those human skills, really recognizing any kind of automation or artificial intelligence's limitations, right? Thinking about how students are applying their learning in real ways. And I would say, like, emphasizing thinking above all knowing. And so, as long as we can use those as core tenets, any kind of technology, whether it's generative artificial intelligence or a calculator, has meaning for both our students and our entire learning community.
I mean, that last point about schools have been thinking more about whether or not cell phones are adding something positive to the culture of the school. Different schools making different decisions there. Um, even the time that we've had with laptops and tablets. Um, yeah, what you're saying, Jenna, about slow and thoughtful makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of wisdom to tap into if we're thinking about technology in a broader sense.
Yeah, and thinking about habits over rules, restrictions, or hacks, like habits over everything, is really critical when you think about learning and, wanting young people to do deep learning, which requires friction and tension and inefficiency, which are all sort of opposite of what artificial intelligence wants, right? And so just thinking about that and being mindful of that and working with students around those habits is really critical.
Thanks. Want to shift a little bit to another very popular topic. People wondering about what role, if any, AI should be playing in feedback and differentiation. Lauren, you got into this a little bit in terms of providing feedback as an administrator. Some people out there feeling like that process, whether we're talking about giving feedback to our colleagues or to students, should be 100% human. AI playing a role there just doesn't feel right. Would love to get thoughts from the three of you about that aspect of the conversation. Yeah. Maya, you want to start us off on this one?
No.
No. Okay.
Can I
I
go?
mean, Lauren, it's more your territory,
I know,
but
but then I
yeah.
hesitated because I realized it went first in every other question, and I was like, "Oh, I'm taking up too much space." So part of me was like, "Just
No,
don't
we love it.
talk first," um, which is just me being transparent. I think feedback is often about the moment that you're in with people. The way you propose feedback is dependent upon how you lead. When I'm providing teacher feedback, I usually position them as questions and observable strengths. So observable strengths and then a question for consideration. And then the debrief is where the magic happens, right? The debrief is where I recognize my misunderstandings and I acknowledge immediately that your class is a microorganism that full of systems that I only saw a brief moment. Your job is to take or leave the feedback that I give you and maybe wonder, how did I get to giving you that feedback? Was it the absence of information that I had? Or was it something that I saw? Was there something that I misunderstood? The dialogue is the better understanding of what happened in the classroom. If you just position written feedback towards your teacher, it's a one-directional feedback method, and there's no growth there. That's a redirection. That's a correction. That's a sage on the stage orientation as an administrator. What I tried to do is use that feedback mechanism to provide really clear glimmers. Teachers are also very deficit oriented and constantly thinking about what I can do better. I also use it as a way to better balance out all of the affirmative feedback so they can say, oh, wow, you're really hitting it on responsive classroom, advisory, all of these different things, as opposed to just what can you do better next time. So again, it also allows individuals, I'm a quick processor, to have time to think about the way that I think so they don't get overrun by my presence, that they, as internal processors, can take what I've said and process it so that when they come to the table, they're better prepared to meet me and where I'm at, and I don't accidentally diminish them by my enthusiasm about talking about education, and more often than not, how brilliant their classroom is. So that's some ways that I use it.
And as you're sharing those details, I'm thinking basically everything you say is easy to translate into student feedback just as well. Yeah, Maya, Jenna, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I love everything that you said. And um I definitely think in general we're very like deficit oriented and especially with teachers, I just couldn't agree more. And so I'm very excited about the AI pointing out the strengths of a teacher. So on QuestionWell, I have like explain the strengths of my lesson as a tool. So teachers can put in their tool and the AI tells them what is good about it. Because something I noticed coming from education research, I could look at anyone's lesson plan and say, what are the strengths of it? But teachers are like in the moment, they're not necessarily thinking at all on all the levels at once. They're going off intuition, creating really good learning experiences, but they're not necessarily able to talk about it at that high level. In the moment, at least, it like they have to take themselves out of it, put themselves in a different place. And so AI can help facilitate that and it can help create a shared language. One thing I'm very excited about for both teachers and students is AI looking at work, so teacher work, student work. Is your hand up? Oh, okay.
Sorry, I was waving to a teacher. I apologize.
Oh, looking at work and then analyzing it along different dimensions and offering kind of discussion questions for a conversation because you talking to the AI is really good for low stakes learning, individual learning, and personalized learning. But then also AI doesn't have to suck you into the laptop and make you chain to it. It can direct you back to your colleagues, back to your classmates, and help you create a scaffold for you, like what a rich discussion given each of your works might look like. And that's something I'm very excited about, both for teachers and for students. A lot of times, students, you ask them to each do something and then compare what they've done, and they go, here's what I did. Oh, here's what I did. And so, like, how can we elevate that conversation using AI? Each teacher can come over and try to elevate it themselves, but they can't go to every single pair in the class at the same time. And so, can we use AI to elevate that conversation? And in the one thing I'm very excited about here is basically using AI to help us analyze our existing work through different theories, so different pedagogies. So culturally responsive is one, UDL is another, and there's a cognitive complexity is another. There's like an infinite number. And so it can kind of support teacher curiosity because you go to a PD, it's very abstract. You are left with the abstractions, and you have to figure out how to apply them to your own work. where I'm excited about and why I'm doing QuestionWell the way that I'm doing it, is that AI can actually help do that application work to give teachers access to these theoretical ideas and in a way that is embedded into their work process. So it's not extra work. It's the work that they're doing anyway, but it becomes an educative material or a learning experience for the teacher, and again, can direct them to talk to other teachers who are going through a similar thing.
Nice.
The last thing that I want to add, Jenna, before I might interrupt you, is that when I'm doing a teacher observation or walkthrough, I otter or transcribe what's in the classroom to get student quotes and to give me a better sense of student to teacher talk ratio and time space, which can be something I lose when I'm fully present in the lesson, but is often the air that you breathe in a classroom. And it helps me pull out a lot of the student curiosities and understandings, which are often huge strengths that are difficult to capture in the moment and feed back to the teacher as well as the students. It's allowed me to do more than just be critical. It also gives me an opportunity to capture time and space and exact student questions and responses to a teacher question, which has been very helpful, just as a more discrete detail.
Thanks. Any thoughts related to feedback or differentiation, Jenna, before we shift to the last one?
I have a really different take on this. I don't think we've at the Cambridge School really found a good use case for feedback or differentiation at this point. I'm going to be completely transparent. We really value our feedback being human focused and human centered. And that could shift in time, but I think one of the things that we stress is that we're here together in community, and how are we doing that? And we have not found a creative solution that would involve artificial intelligence related to feedback specifically.
That ties in to the last thing that we're going to cover here is um, thinking about situations in which someone who's in a more leadership position really shouldn't lean to the AI. So, Lauren, you shared a bunch of examples in your role of where you can leverage AI effectively, but curious from any of our panelists about what comes to mind when you think about a situation where you think a school leader maybe does not want to lean into AI in that particular moment. What jumps to mind?
Well, what I say in the book that is coming out any day now, that I forgot to mention in my intro, which is called Irreplaceable: How AI Changes Everything and Nothing in Teaching and Learning. We talk about how in the sort of grading and feedback chapter, that AI can provide feedback on everything, but shouldn't really be giving the grade on anything, because ultimately that is the role of the teacher. And when something is consequential, and sort of evaluative like that, it's really important for trust, for there to be a human element. And I think in the professional setting of administrators to teachers, it's similar. I think that AI should be absolutely used as support. But it's in the same way that we always talk about AI as like an intern, and its level has increased. So it used to be a middle school level, then it was high school level. Now it's kind of whatever level you prompt it at, but you would never ask an intern to be making decisions, assigning grades, like anything that you wouldn't ask an intern to do, because it's liable to make mistakes, or because you need that trust for the human-human connection, applies to AI.
That's a really helpful way of framing it, Maya. Thanks. Other thoughts?
I would just second that, is that automation I'm extremely resistant to. AI is a supportive partner, but it is definitely a number not even two. It is, if you are using it in an automated sense, if you are not putting yourself and your values, to Jenna's point, and your kind of mission and orientation into your messaging, AI will cause the people that you're trying to serve to feel separate from you, that you are cold, and that everything is a one-directional, top-down communication. It is, in my best practice of it, an organizational tool for myself, but it is not the place where I come up with new ideas. It might be the place where I practice in order to prepare, but it is not the place of creation. And I think that you have to be responsive to the human beings who are in front of you and create together, and then use it as a tool to bridge misunderstandings and communication, but not to generate the first connection. It will fail for you every time if you try that.
Space for a final thought, Jenna?
I think that the most important things, I've stressed a few times, which is that everything that we do in a learning community, and that involves both the faculty, the staff, administrators, and our students, is that we have proof of artifacts, right? So what does that look like in a classroom? What are the proof of artifacts for a student along the way? What are the proof of artifacts for a faculty or a teacher in that space, right? They are accountable to the students and the rest of the community for those proof of artifacts. And the same applies for our administrators, right? And if we can't clearly identify those proof of artifacts, then we go back to the mission and values of the school and we think about what it is we're doing. And that's the way that we make our decisions and the choices that on the tools we're using or the ways that we're going about creating, drafting, or executing anything.
Um, One thing that runs through my mind there is that just another place where it's so important for a school to really do the work on mission and values, make sure that that compass is really going to guide them where they want to go. Um, I'm noticing the time. Want to respect everybody's time. I want to thank our three panelists. Yeah, Jenna, Maya, Lauren, that was so helpful to get your perspectives on those questions. Big thanks for taking the time to talk with us. I'm going to share my screen again and let's see.
While you're sharing, can I just jump in with one more thing that I meant to say and just completely forgot regarding
Please.
differentiation?
Yeah.
Which is just that this is one of the main use cases that I see actually. So it's really interesting to hear Jenna say that they haven't found a use for it, because translation, changing reading levels, this is something that teachers really, their eyes light up because when they have 12 grade levels all in their classroom, all in their fifth grade classroom, it could be really, really challenging. And then also different interests. And so having the AI combine different interests. So like describe the cell through Minecraft. These are like low level things. I feel like we were talking about much higher level, more interesting things, but those low level things are also a use that I'm seeing a lot.
Nice. Thank you. Um, so thanks again. We will make sure that recording goes out to everybody who is registered, and we'll pass along some resources there too. Mira, you want to jump in there?
Sure. Let's see, let me just
I was
pull
just
myself up.
on the newsletter
Yeah.
was the bullet that
Yeah,
was making me think,
just want
Mira.
to let folks know that Trade Education publishes a newsletter every month, different topics, and we will add you to that newsletter. You can, of course, unsubscribe at any moment, but we touch on a range of things, and hopefully something there will be interesting to you. And I expect that in the next few months, we'll probably hit another topic of AI again.
And this is number 3 in this series of Q&A sessions. The fourth one will be happening on May 5th. We are in the works of finalizing the panelists, but we know already that Eric Hudson is going to join us. Super excited. If you've read any of his work, you know that he's doing some really great work. And we'll share details, LinkedIn and those places as soon as we've got a little bit more. I have been running a community of practice for people who are thinking about AI. If you are thinking about next year, 26, 27, feel free to shoot me an email and I'll make sure that you're in the loop as we are putting together one or more cohorts to continue these conversations during the next school year. Um, and then, oh, is that loading? It's not loading on my screen. Let me try a quick refresh. And then Mira, two events that I know you wanted to talk about. I think that's all better now.
Yeah, one is if you're interested in a different perspective or a different lens on AI, we know that it's a really powerful tool, including the creation of synthetic media and deep fakes. Evan Harris and I will be uh, running a webinar on deepfake safety for schools. This is a 90-minute webinar. The first hour or so will be sort of like crash course on sort of everything you need to know about deepfakes and cases in schools and why it's happening, and also how to both prevent and respond. And then there's going to be some conversation afterwards. So this QR code or the link at the bottom there. It'll also be in the email that Rob sends. It's free. All you need to do is sign up.
And finally,
And relatedly, same topic, but we're going to be running an online session, a deeper dive. So if you're interested in sort of getting your team ready for what's next, hope to have you join us. Just sign up here.
all right. Well, with that, thanks again to all three panelists. Thanks to everybody who signed up. Thanks for all your questions, and looking forward to seeing people May 5th for the last for this year in this series. All right, take care.